I'll never forget the way the hospital smelled that night. Bleach, plastic, and the faint sting of something sterile, like even the air was trying to hide the truth. I walked in, not because I wanted to, but because my phone had blown up with calls from her family. They made it sound like she was on her deathbed, like if I didn't come, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. But when I pushed open the door, there she was, alive, bruised, but very much alert. And instead of tears of remorse or even shame, I was met with her glare. Her family surrounded her bed like a shield, shooting me dirty looks as if I was the one who had put her there. "You finally decided to show up?" she spat, her voice hoarse but steady. "Do you know how embarrassing it was to be lying here and not have my husband by my side?" Her mother clutched her hand, nodding vigorously. "She needs you right now. Whatever happened before, you need to let it go. Be a good husband. Forgive her. Forgive her." The word hung in the air like poison. They all knew what she had done. They all knew why my chest felt like it had been torn apart. And yet, in their eyes, I was the villain, for not rushing here the moment she snapped her fingers. But as I stood there, staring at the woman who had torn my heart apart, I knew one thing. What they were asking of me was impossible. When I first met her, she was radiant in a way that drew every eye in the room. She had this effortless charm, the kind of energy that made people lean in closer when she spoke. I couldn't believe she chose me, an ordinary guy with steady goals and a quiet nature. I thought I'd won the lottery. From the beginning, I built my life around her dreams. She wanted to pursue graduate school in another city, and even though I had a solid job lined up, I gave it up so we could move. I told myself love meant sacrifice, and I was proud to carry the weight. I worked long hours to pay the bills while she studied, telling myself it was temporary, that we were building a future together. But little cracks began to show. At first, it was small things. She'd tease me in front of her friends, call me boring because I preferred quiet nights in over flashy parties. She'd laugh about how predictable I was, and everyone else would laugh with her. I forced a smile, swallowing the sting, because what harm was there in a little joke? Still, the pattern grew. I cleaned up after her, handled groceries, cooked meals, paid rent, and made sure she never had to worry about a thing. In return, she'd roll her eyes and sigh, saying I was too safe, that sometimes she wished I had more edge, more fire. I thought she wanted excitement. I didn't realize she meant recklessness. Looking back, it's clear I was the loyal foundation she stood on while she reached for more glamorous things. I told myself it was love, but in truth it was imbalance, me giving everything, and her giving only when it suited her. Back then, I brushed off the sign. I thought love meant patience, but I didn't realize those tiny cracks were about to split wide open. The more time passed, the clearer it became that she thrived on attention, just not mine. Whenever we went out, she would light up in conversations with other men. She'd lean in too close, laugh too hard at their joke, touch their arms like it was second nature. When I pulled her aside one night and asked if she realized how it looked, she rolled her eyes. "Relax," she said. "You should be grateful a woman like me even chose you. Do you know how many guys would kill to be in your place?" That line stuck with me. Grateful to be chosen. It wasn't about partnership, it was about power. It didn't stop there. At parties, she started turning me into the punchline. She'd smirk at her friends and say, "He's sweet, but he's so clingy. He always needs reassurance, like a lost puppy." They'd laugh, and I'd stand there, pretending the words didn't burn holes through me. Another time, I overheard her telling a group of coworkers that I wasn't man enough to keep up with her. My face burned with humiliation, but I swallowed it, convincing myself she didn't mean it. But the late nights started creeping in. She'd say she was out with classmates, studying, networking. At first, I believed her, but then I noticed the way she'd hide her phone, the sudden silences when I walked into a room, the half-finished messages on the screen before she locked it. When I asked her, gently, she turned it back on me. "You're paranoid," she snapped. "Why can't you trust me? You're smothering me with your insecurity." And just like that, I became the problem. She cried, accused me of being controlling, and when I apologized just to calm the storm, she'd flip the switch, suddenly affectionate, showering me with kisses, whispering that I was the only one she loved. It was a cycle. Tear me down, build me back up, only to tear me down again. And every time, I convinced myself to stay because those brief moments of affection felt like glimpses of the woman I fell in love with. But then came the night I couldn't ignore. She said she was working late on a group project. Something in my gut told me otherwise. Hours passed, and I decided to drive by the campus. Her car wasn't there. My heart pounded as I followed the trail, checking places she liked to go. That's when I saw it. her car parked outside a small apartment complex on the other side of town. I felt sick, but I had to know. My hands shook as I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. And then I saw it. The door wasn't fully closed. I pushed it open and froze. There she was, my wife, wrapped around another man like I didn't even exist. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Instead, she smirked, almost daring me to react. And that night, as I stood frozen in the doorway, watching the truth unfold in front of me, I had no idea that her betrayal would soon land her in the hospital. The silence after I caught her was deafening. She didn't rush to cover herself. She didn't cry. She didn't even act surprised. Instead, she crossed her arms and glared at me like I was the intruder. "Well," she said coldly, "now you know." Happy, I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but all that came out was a hollow, "Why?" Her laugh was sharp, cutting. "Because you're not enough. You've never been enough. I married you because you were safe, dependable, but safe gets boring. You're predictable. You're dull." Each word landed like a blade. She didn't just admit to cheating, she gutted me with it. I tried to stay calm, to hold on to whatever shred of dignity I had left. "After everything I've done for you, after everything I gave up, this is how you repay me." She rolled her eyes, her voice dripping with contempt. "Don't act like a martyr. No one asked you to play the hero. Maybe if you had a little more backbone, I wouldn't have had to find someone else." That was it, the final crack. I realized there was nothing left to salvage. Without another word, I turned and walked out, each step heavier than the last, but each one carrying me further away from the wreckage of what I thought was love. The days that followed were a blur. My phone buzzed with messages I ignored. Then one evening, her sister called, panic lacing her voice. "You need to come to the hospital. She's been hurt." Against my better judgment, I went. When I arrived, I learned the truth. She and the man she cheated with had gotten into a violent argument. He left her bloodied and broken. The image made me sick, not out of love, but out of the cruel irony. She had destroyed our marriage for him, and he had turned on her just as easily. But instead of outrage at him, her family turned on me. Her mother sobbed, clutching my arm. "If you had been there for her, this wouldn't have happened. You're her husband. How could you just abandon her?" Abandon her? My jaw clenched. They acted like my silence was worse than her betrayal, like I had pushed her into the arms of another man. Finally, I walked into her hospital room. She was hooked to monitors, her face bruised, her arm in a sling. For the first time in weeks, she didn't look invincible. She looked small, fragile. When her eyes met mine, the tears started. "I made a mistake," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, please forgive me. I can't do this without you." But I could see it in her expression. It wasn't love driving her words. It was fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of facing the consequences of her choices without the safety net of the man she once mocked for being too safe. Her family stood behind me, waiting for me to give in, to play the role of the devoted husband once more. But as I looked at her, the memories of her insults, her laughter at my expense, her betrayal, all of it flooded back. She looked me in the eyes, tears streaming down her face, and whispered the words everyone was waiting for me to accept, but my heart had already shattered beyond repair. The days after the hospital visit felt like a storm I couldn't escape. Her family called constantly, their voices filled with righteous indignation. Her mother repeated the same line over and over. She made a mistake. Marriage is about forgiveness, about working through the hard time. Her father added his own pressure, telling me, real men don't walk away when things get difficult. Be strong enough to stay. But every time I heard those words, my chest tightened with anger. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, not dismantling someone's soul piece by piece and then crawling into another man's bed. Meanwhile, my friends, those who had watched the relationship from the sidelines, finally let the truth spill out. One of them pulled me aside and said, "Man, we didn't want to say anything before, but we all saw it. The way she talked down to you, the way she flirted with other guys in front of you. She's been toxic from day one. We just didn't know how to tell you." Hearing it stung, but at the same time, it was a relief to know I hadn't been imagining it all. One sleepless night, I found myself scrolling online. I ended up on Reddit, reading stories from people who had gone through the same hell. Post after post, strangers wrote about betrayal, gaslighting, emotional abuse. Some even sounded word for word like my own life. And the comments? They were merciless toward the cheaters, filled with validation I hadn't realized I needed. No one deserves that level of betrayal. Walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. You gave your all, and she threw it away. It was like a chorus of voices cutting through the guilt her family kept trying to pile on me. For once, I didn't feel like I was crazy or cruel for refusing to bend. And yet, the guilt trips didn't stop. Her sister messaged me late one night, "She's broken without you. Don't you see she needs you? How can you be so cold? I stared at the message for a long time before putting my phone face down. Cold? No. I had been warm, loyal, patient, and forgiving for years. But fire that burns too long turns to ash, and that's all I had left to give. The voices of family, the voices of friends, the voices of strangers on the internet, they all clashed in my head, each one telling me what I should do, who I should be. But in the end, no matter how loud their voices were, I knew the only choice that mattered was my own. In the weeks that followed, I found myself standing at a crossroads I never thought I'd face. On one side was the life I had built around her, the years of loyalty, sacrifice, and blind faith. On the other was the unknown, a future without the woman I once believed was my forever. For a while, the emptiness was suffocating. The silence in my apartment felt heavier than her insults ever did. But slowly, I began to see it for what it was, not a void, but freedom. I started small. I went back to the gym, not to impress anyone, but to feel strong in my own skin again. I reconnected with friends I had drifted from, people who reminded me that I was more than the man she had diminished. I even picked up old hobbies I'd abandoned: painting, hiking, late-night drives with music blasting through the windows. Piece by piece, I was reclaiming parts of myself she had buried under her constant criticism. And somewhere along the way, I realized something powerful. Forgiveness doesn't mean sacrificing self-worth. Yes, I could forgive her in my heart, not for her sake, but for mine. But forgiveness didn't mean taking her back. It didn't mean erasing the betrayal or pretending love could survive where respect had died. The lesson I carry now is simple. Love should never come at the cost of dignity. Boundaries aren't walls. They're guardrails that keep us from driving ourselves into destruction in the name of devotion. She may have survived that night in the hospital, but I survived something even harder: the death of the illusion I once called love.